Welcome one more time to You Multicultural channel. Today at the Newcomer Network, we will be talking about parenting, but from a different perspective. A few months ago, we had a mother talking about the parenting styles, but today we're having a clinician, and she's Joanne Brown. Welcome, Joanne.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for your time, because you are an expert. I am so happy because I know we are going to bring lots of important information for our newcomer community.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I would like to give you some time to introduce yourself.
All right, well, I've been a social worker for over 35 years and always working with complicated families around parenting, around issues that impact both the parents and the children. I have been the co-chair of the Attachment Network of Manitoba for over 20 some years. We've had it in existence. It exists as a website, which is just www.attachmentnetwork.ca, and we'll talk a little more about that later. And I've been a mom for, I shouldn't say how long I've been a mom. My daughter wouldn't want to hear that, but I've been a mom for a very long time, and I'm a grandmother as well. And a dog mom now.
Oh yeah, Joanne, you know, I'm an early childhood educator, and I'm also a mom, and I experienced the difference in parenting back in my country in Canada. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of challenging at the beginning, and especially when you don't understand and you don't have that education. Mm-hmm. And this is why I wanted to have you here and talk not from the experience perspective, but from the clinician perspective. Mm-hmm. How do you see newcomers, I would say, challenge with parenting when they migrate, when they come to Canada?
Mm-hmm. First-hand knowledge, too. My mother came to Canada before she became a mother, but you know, I grew up with that perspective as well of what it was like to relocate, you know, community, culture, climate, currency. Well, I don't have to tell you, right? And it's just so much overhaul. But there's an awful lot of emotional labor, I think, that goes into preparing when you deliberately want to migrate, to prepare, to pick that place, to line up something at the other end, to finish off loose ends here. In your own country, and then go. And so I think from children's perspectives, what can happen, doesn't always happen, but what can happen and what's something to watch out for is, you know, kids are sitting at home and they're sort of watching the mums and the dads get all worked up doing all of this stuff and you know, having a lot of emotional experience, saying goodbye to what's familiar, excitement about what's not familiar. There's a bit of a tendency for a couple of things. One is to believe that all of us in the family are just as excited equally, and it's going to be beneficial for all of us equally. Maybe not. The other thing is that kids continue to have needs and experiences developmentally as mums and dads are busy doing all of these things. And sometimes as we put a lot of energy into one area, we forget to put some energy into another. That doesn't mean anybody intended for that to happen, but it sometimes happens. And so things get out of balance a little bit. And then it goes on a little longer and they stay out of balance a bit more. And then when we get here, it isn't all what we expected it to be. And so things may stay a little more out of balance. And that we definitely see clinically, where people show up and you know, it's through nobody's fault that these things have happened. But it's a bit of an accumulation of not noticing or appreciating the differences of the different children in the family. So what we have to do then is go back and sort of backfill some of those gaps that have happened for these kiddos so that everything sort of balances out again.
What are those things that you can observe in the children that you might think, that child might need some help? Mm-hmm. Or that family?
Yeah, I think where it starts is often time, right? The biggest gift you can ever give your children is time with them. And as I said, when there's a tremendous amount of energy going into this, so we've had our regular life, we've been doing this, now all of a sudden we have to add in all the work that goes into immigrating. And so that time to put that work in has to come from somewhere. And sometimes it comes from our children. And again, nobody set out to deny their child that time, but it can happen. And it happens in busy families that don't relocate. It happens to a lot of families. So the trick is, can I reflect on this often enough? Can I notice things? Can I take stock of where we're at? But when that time is denied, children start to go, if you will, hungry. And they show that hunger sometimes in lots of different ways. So some kids are going to tuck that inside. You're not going to know about it. It's going to get tucked in. And other kids are going to sort of instinctively draw mom or dad's attention toward them by acting out, right? And those are the kids that we often think about because they're acting out, they're catching our attention.
It's okay to say manipulation. Some people use that term.
I don't like that term because it sounds very deliberate, and I don't think these are deliberate things that, I'm glad you said that, because I don't think it's deliberate at all. I do too. I don't think for a second that any of these kiddos are sitting under the covers at night with a flashlight thinking I'm going to overthrow the family. But I believe that all of us, when we aren't thinking about what we're doing, we're all on autopilot. Children are on autopilot. I'm on autopilot. You're on autopilot. Every family would be. And autopilot for grown-ups has been dictated. How we interface with our children, how we interface with other people, has been dictated by our experiences in childhood, and that's what we're really touching on as a concept of parent-child attachment here, and so our children are forming these attachment relationships or attachment habits, if you will, and so they're malleable. Right? And if we give them too little of this or too much of that, it skews the formation of that development. So paying attention to that, and is this the same kind of kiddo that I had a few years ago? Is this the same kind of kiddo that I had a month or two ago? What changed in our child? And I think one of the reasons that we talk about this is stress.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? So yes, people choose to come here for the betterment of their family, for the betterment of themselves, but it's stressful. Even just moving in the city is one of the hardest things you can do in your life. Moving nations is an incredibly difficult thing. Moving languages is an incredibly difficult thing. So when folks are under a tremendous amount of stress, we're going to rely on the habits that we acquired in childhood to cope. And that habit may be that I get a little, as a grown-up, I might be somebody who gets a little shut in, quiet, reserved, don't really tell anybody that I'm under that kind of stress. Or I might be the kind of parent who's, sort of bouncing that stress off of myself everywhere. You meet somebody at a bus stop, they say, "How are you doing?" I might tell them my life story, So we all have a variety of styles based on the kinds of ways that we were raised and how our experience and practice is when we're under stress. So that's going to come out even more when we're under that extreme stress of relocating. And that creates the formation of the way our children are going to start to practice stress.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mentioned the word manipulation because it's very common, but there's another word. He's seeking for attention.
Yeah. And, my substitute for that is when we say they're just attention seeking, they're just connection seeking. And it doesn't sound so diabolical. Kids need our connection. They need to know that they're safe. They need to know some grown-ups are in charge. They need to know that their needs are going to get met. And they have a terrific built-in system of calling attention to us, to themselves, if they don't get those assurances.
And I think that sometimes we as parents don't recognize those needs. Mm-hmm. And that's the first issue, because if you don't recognize there's a need, how are you going to meet that need?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's some universal needs that all children require, and when they're nice and calm and connected, they have this terrific system inside of them that kicks in automatically and allows them to play and explore and learn. I am always marveling at how quickly children pick up language when they relocate, right?
Yeah.
And how hard it is for us.
us.
Faster than their parent. And that also sets up an interesting dynamic in the family sometimes, because the grown-ups may be needing the 5-year-old to translate, because the 5-year-old picked up language a little quicker. So children are kind of put into some positions of, not authority, but they're put into a different kind of a strata, if you will, in the family. Power, maybe, yeah, could be, and that's a little out of balance again, perhaps. And then there's sort of this reliance sometimes from parents that I've seen. This is just anecdotally what I've seen. Because my child has acquired language, they probably are reading some of the nuances in the culture as well better than I am. And so I'm going to sort of rely on my child to guide me. And that can set up a little cascade of events where my child is now going to set the tone for a lot of things in the family. And so this little person has now got this very big role, which is very stressful for a child, very exciting for a child, but it's stressful for a child. Developmentally, it's inappropriate for them. And it diminishes the effectiveness of the parent. They start to feel like my kid knows more than I do. I'm just going to take a back seat here. And so that structure then is out of whack from what it should look like, I guess.
And what about when there are behavior challenges? We deal in a different way back home, but in Canada it works different. How can we deal with that?
Yeah. Well, and this is the interesting thing.
Some things are prohibited.
Yes. Yeah, we have laws around certain things, and other things look like we're being very laissez-faire.
It's okay to let the children do whatever they want, as you say.
Yeah. So when I look at the science behind attachment, in the 1960s, this researcher in the United States started working with. There was, like right now, you can walk into a bookstore, there's probably 5 or 6 bookshelves devoted to parenting. And you can pick one book out and it looks different than the next one. It'll talk about different things. So it's an industry. But in the 1960s and so on, when I was growing up, this wasn't an industry at all. It was not even thought about very much. So some researcher, Mary Ainsworth, decided I'm going to figure out how parents are raising children. And she thought there'd be this wide variety of ways that parents were raising children. She saw 3 really distinct patterns, and that was it. A little bit of variance, but primarily 3 different ways parents were raising children. Then she went to the other end of the earth. She was in Baltimore, and she went to the other end of the earth to Uganda and studied a community there that was really remote, didn't interface with other communities. And she thought, maybe they're a homogenous group of people. There's one way. Nope, it's 3 ways. Same 3 ways there was in Baltimore. And then that study started getting replicated across the planet. And so what we have is those same primarily 3 ways. They discovered a 4th. They're named a 4th, if you will. So there's really 4 kind of primary attachment patterns or primary ways parents are raising children across the globe. So this has less to do with culture and more to do with being human, how the brain is, which is a relief in Canada. We're a very multicultural country. Some of us are a little of this and a little of that. And so you may have an experience from the country you grew up in that says this is how we raise children.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, there's this same variety of attachment patterns there.
Okay.
All right. So to you, it feels like there's kind of more one way, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
And we hear that a lot when people come from countries where there's primarily one culture, right? So if somebody were to come from, say, Australia that has a lot of immigration as well, or some other parts of the world where there's, more of a multicultural kind of mix, it doesn't seem so obvious. But when you come from a nation where there's kind of one religion, primarily one
Yeah.
culture, one language, those sorts of things, it feels like we're all the same. But there's still that variety within.
Yes, it is.
So your experience may be indicative of your community, but it isn't always indicative of your culture. Right? So the fact that we have those laws, we also have people in Canada that violate those laws. And when we talked about, Canadians having more of a laissez-faire way of raising children than some other nations look like they have, there's also people who don't have that. Okay. So I think that's an important thing to remember, is that there's always that variety, and it may feel like this country produces people that are more anxious, or this country produces people that are more chill. There's definitely that same variety, almost statistically similar.
Oh, I didn't.
Isn't that cool? It just looks a little bit different.
But I hear very frequent, like, people saying, in Canada, children, they do whatever they want, or I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. What should I do? Just leave the children do whatever they want to? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they struggle because they don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably more of, I wonder if that's more of a, I want to fit in, I don't want to look different issue for the parent than it is for anything else.
Yeah, and even the children look the difference when they go to school. The approach of the children, the approach of the teachers as adults, and the approach of their parents, or, for example, the teachers back home, different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But there's still the variety.
Yeah.
I can, as you're talking, I'm thinking of all the teachers that I had 100 years ago when I went to school. And, I had some that were, I had the whole spectrum. Some that were very harsh and clamped down, and some that really let you get creative and do whatever. But let's go back to the needs that children have. And maybe when we think about that, we think about the responses we have.
Good.
So, as I said, they have this terrific system when they're calm and when they're connected to people. So if mom or dad, I keep saying mom or dad, I know there's 2 mom families, 2 dad families, mom and dad families. I know, but I feel like I want to say that. And then there's single parent families. But if my parents are preoccupied or really busy with all of this business of relocating and settling us and taking care of, getting into jobs or schools and language acquisition and things like that, then it may not feel connecting enough. So I may be connection seeking a whole lot more, trying to get that parent to be with me a little bit more, trying to get that balance back. And that's just an automatic feeling to need that, right? And then, of course, if all of this has just been very difficult, it affects children's ability to be calm. So all of this has been really unsettling. My heart is still back home. I don't like the food here. I don't like how noisy it is here. All of those things can happen for children, and it feels harder to be calm. It feels like I have to really work at getting calm. And sometimes that collides with the expectation that the parent has, hey, we should all be happy we're here. Let's appreciate what we had to do to get here.
We talk about that the previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those expectations aren't all equal for all of us, right? But when kids are calm and their creativity will start to come out, they'll start to bloom. That's when we really see that. That's part of why we see that language acquisition so fast for them. And then they need us to sort of be alongside them, be involved with them, keep sort of track of what's happening for them, acknowledge the things that are important to them, have some fun with them, right? Fun is a big part of why we look forward to being parents. And help kids when they need it. Let kids have a little bit of autonomy and help them when they need it. And those are challenges for the best of us, to sometimes get all of that right. But when kids are starting to struggle or they're experiencing some stress, they have other kinds of needs. And then we want to kind of swoop in and collect them a little bit more. So, how we attune to the feeling we think they have. So children their first language, no matter what country they come from, everybody's first language is behavior.
Yes.
Right? Gets everybody's attention. So our job sometimes as parents is to be the Google Translate of that behavior. So look at that behavior and think about what's the feeling underneath it. What if I see this kid doing something, what are they feeling underneath that? And we often want to clamp down and extinguish the behavior instead of become curious about what's under
and
that.
I like to see that from that point of view, because sometimes we focus on the behavior and we focus on the child, not on the behavior. What is the cause? And it's something that was kind of challenging for me at the beginning, because I went immediately to the child, but I didn't think about what is causing that child to behave that way.
And if you ask children, they don't often know. In fact, if you ask me sometimes why I'm really upset, I don't even know. And I'm an old lady. So when we're really worked up, it's hard for us to articulate why we're worked up. So our stress starts to show, and our job as parents is to kind of know our kiddos enough to be able to take some pretty good guesses at what they're feeling. Not necessarily why they're feeling that, but just that they're feeling it. And name that and be a resource to our child. So come here, let me help you with that. You know, come here, let me get you calm. Come here, let's have a little snuggle for a bit. And I don't care if they're 17 years old, they can still fit on your lap, even if they squish your leg. We all need that. Even as adults, we need that, right? We never let go of that. So that puts the parent in that role again of being the one that knows what's good for the child, the one that can be a resource to the child. So the work is really, I'm going to protect you from the bigness of that feeling. I'm going to comfort you and settle you until that big feeling starts to shrink.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to help you contain that feeling. I don't want to scold you for having that feeling or having that behavior that came out of that feeling, because if I scold you, you're going to feel shame, and I don't want you to feel shame. I want you to maybe feel guilt if you did something bad. Guilt is I take responsibility. I'm going to make it better. And then all of that is really around helping kids get their feelings sorted out. So feelings are like a big wave, right? They get big, then they get small again. Then they get big, and then they get small again. And sometimes those waves happen really fast next to each other. And sometimes there's a nice lull in between those waves. The important thing is to look at, for parents, is are those waves starting to become bigger for my kiddo? Are those waves starting to speed up for my child? Because that might tell me there's something bigger happening for them. But as kids are learning, they're on I'd say a 20-year practicum having feelings. They're not going to get good at it for a while. And so and moms and dads have had lots of experience having feelings. They've been in their bodies for a long time, and I trust their wisdom. So our work isn't so much to get the kid to manage the behavior, but to help the child manage the peaks and valleys of some of these emotions and just be with them. Because the most powerful thing you can do for another human being is to be with them through a feeling until the feeling ends. And that's how children learn to resolve emotions.
But sometimes parents don't like or
it
feel
scares
comfortable.
That's right.
With certain feelings. For example, a tantrum. A tantrum is not a feeling, but
it is.
Sadness or being angry.
Yeah, but none of us like changing diapers
Parents
the first time either, and you had to get used to that. So this is one of those things that hits all parents, whether they're newcomer parents or whether they've lived in one place all along. It hits us all the same, and we have to get to where we are comfortable with the feelings that our children have. And if I get too scared by the bigness of my child's feeling, what I'm going to do is pull away from my child or get mad at my child. Yeah. Those are two things that happen to all of us. And then my child is left alone with this feeling. Yeah. And the more that the one or two times you do that, no big deal. But when that becomes the pattern, then my child starts to realize the feeling I have is so huge, it actually pushes my mom or my dad away from me. My feeling must be so big. I must be such a hot mess I bet you nobody knows what to do for me.
And I think that's why many adults behave like that. They are sad, but they don't show that sadness, and they feel ashamed to be sad, or that people can see how they feel or notice how they feel because of that.
Yeah. And so you've learned how to be. We learn in relationship. So we want to give our kids the optimal chances at freedom of expression. And if our kids learn, I can unload some of these big feelings with mom or dad at home, I'm going to learn how to shape some of those a little bit, kind of tone it down a bit, so that when I'm standing at a bus stop, or I'm in the middle of school, or at a soccer game, I'm not going to have those emotions going all over the place. I'm going to be able to cope much better if I can practice some of those peaks and valleys with mom or dad's help. Where it often shows up, where people seek help, is when the parents themselves find that they're fighting against that wave that of emotion going on at home, and they start to manage the behavior. And I think one of the humbling things for all of us as parents is to realize all I can manage is me. Yeah. I can't manage another human being. It's a full-time job managing me. And I think it's the same for all of us. So, but parents sometimes think I have to not only manage what my child is doing, but control what they're doing. And that's a little bit of a rabbit hole parents fall into. And of course, the one being controlled, the child, fights back. They don't want that either. They want help. They want assistance. And I think about, when we talk about being with a child as they're having big feelings, right? And we think about those negative feelings. But it's also important to have the great feelings with kids, too. Like, you can't have a really good belly laugh by yourself. Yeah. You can't. You can be watching something super funny on TV, but you won't laugh to where you think you're never going to breathe again. You won't be able to do that if you don't have somebody with you laughing at the same time.
Yeah. Sometimes parents feel more comfortable with those, I don't like to say positive feelings, but those feelings that, such as joy, exploration, they feel more comfortable with those ones. However, during those feelings, they are not that much connected sometimes, and they pay more attention during those tantrums or being mad. I don't know. I think it's the opposite.
Well, because those scare us. It feels too big, right? Yeah. Balance is the word, right? Balance is the word. Can I have all of that? Can I get comfortable with all of that? And if I can get comfortable with all of those ranges of feelings, then I'm going to help shape the peaks and valleys for my child. But my child is going to be okay with those feelings. Yeah. And if they're okay with those feelings, they're okay to go out into the world. My child will be okay wherever they go, because those feelings are going to go and pop up everywhere in their life. Yeah.
Something that I'm thinking now, I'm thinking of when children cry in some families say, "Oh, why are you crying? You have food, you are not sick, you're not hungry. There's no need to be sad. You have everything." And we are doing the same here. Why are you sad? Because you're in Canada. You have everything. You wanted to come to Canada. Why are you sad now? There's no reason to be sad. And we don't label those feelings, and we don't recognize those issues that are causing you stress.
Yeah. And that's what I was talking about with expectations. Yeah. So as a parent, I've chosen to bring my family here, and this is for the betterment of us all, so why doesn't this child appreciate what I did? But it also is one of those universal things, too, that some of us in our past have had parents that did this to us, right? This has been our experience as children, where we've needed something from our parent, and our parent has kind of said, "You're okay. Get over it. You're fine. Pick up. Go on. Don't cry." And so now our automatic response when our children are crying is to say those same things to them. That has nothing to do with being an immigrant. That has everything to do with being human again.
Yeah.
It is.
Why do we see it like that? We see it like it's us, not... But I'm very happy that you're saying that, so people don't feel we are different.
No.
That it's a human thing.
It is a human thing. And but we always want to blame it on the one thing we did, right? Oh, man, maybe I should have stayed in my other country. Maybe I shouldn't have done this, And it's the same. We see this with families where children have been adopted. Everything that happened has to have to do with the adoption. No, not necessarily.
Wow, thank you so much, Joanne. I can see that in a different perspective now. For sure.
Oh, good.
For sure. But you know what? I would like us to talk a little bit about the attachment network.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit.
So, 20 some years ago, attachment was pretty much a theory and in academia, and we had started to see a bunch of us in Winnipeg had gotten together and had some really brilliant people coming into town and doing workshops and trainings and things, and we thought this is something that we need to be talking about a little bit more, just what we've talked about today. And we created an interagency network of different clinicians and practitioners, and then we created, around that same time, the World Wide Web was getting built, and so we jumped into that. And so it's a volunteer organization that exists strictly as the website, attachmentnetwork.ca. And, we're a registered Canadian charity. We have a board, all that kind of thing. And we used to do, before COVID, we would do an annual conference, and we brought in some of North America's most experts.
Again, please. Have me over.
But what we did is we created a bunch of resources, and so now it's more of a network that, just like I said, exists as a website. And because COVID sort of changed our ability to come together, of course, for a long time we didn't do that. And then one of the byproducts of COVID is there's so much free content now, or electronic content. So some of those big names don't want to travel any longer, and people don't always have time or budgets to get together and do those conferences. So we're just passing on what we know out there, but we put together what I call the user's manual to having a child, which is 10 things your baby wants you to know. And then
I have them here.
Yeah,
I have them here.
We did 4 of them. So we did 10 things your baby wants you to know, 10 things your toddler wants you to know, 10 things your school-age child wants you to know, and 10 things your teenager
Give me a second.
wants you to know.
I just have 2 here.
Yeah. And we translated them into, Spanish, which you have, and French, and Korean Ojibwe, and Tagalog, and Arabic, as well as English. And then we have a few others that are just in English. But those are available for free download on the website or for purchase. And then some books and different websites and links and stuff. So it's like a first click, the first click in the shopping of, what are best practices, what's good information.
Thank you so much, Joanne, for your time, and thank you to our wonderful audience. Thank you once again. You're always there for us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, Multicultural channel, Jocelyn Gilbert, and the Newcomer Network. See you next time, and bye-bye.